Welcome to Echoes of Ihsan, everybody. Today we're taking a deep dive into the wisdom of Imam al-Ghazali, the prominent Islamic thinker from back in the 11th century.
Hmm.
We're going to be zeroing in specifically on his insights on knowledge, or ilm.
Right. Ilm, as it's known in Arabic.
Yeah, exactly. A subject he considered absolutely paramount to human existence, to spiritual growth, all of that.
Definitely. And you know what makes al-Ghazali's approach to knowledge so unique? He doesn't just tell you what to believe. He encourages us to actually think critically.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he really prompts us to question our assumptions about the world, about ourselves. It's a process of discovery, intellectual and spiritual, both.
That's fascinating. And to kind of help us navigate this journey, we have excerpts from three of his most important works: Marvels of the Heart, The Remembrance of Death, and On Disciplining the Self.
Yeah, great texts. And each one kind of explores a different facet of knowledge and its impact on our lives.
Aye.
And the thing that ties these works together is the emphasis on knowledge as this transformative force. It's not just about storing information. It's about cultivating wisdom, about refining your character and drawing closer to the divine.
Right, so it's about applying what we learn, right?
Yeah.
Letting it shape who we are, how we act in the world.
Exactly. That's a really powerful idea.
Yeah?
And al-Ghazali, he starts off by really highlighting just how necessary knowledge is. He uses a powerful analogy. He compares intellectual knowledge to food and religious knowledge to medicine.
Oh, that's a great analogy. Yeah, makes sense. Our bodies need nourishment. They need healing, right? Our souls, same thing. They need intellectual and spiritual sustenance, both.
Exactly. He argues that neglecting either one of those can have a really negative impact on our spiritual well-being. So intellectual knowledge, without that compass of religious principles, that can lead you to misguided actions. And on the other hand, religious knowledge that's not grounded in a solid intellectual foundation can become very rigid, very dogmatic.
Right. So it's about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
Nurturing both the intellect and the spirit.
Precisely. Now, think about your own life, right? What kind of knowledge do you prioritize?
Oh, that's a good question.
Do you lean more towards intellectual pursuits? Like, are you always reading, studying, or are you drawn more to religious teachings? Do you find yourself seeking spiritual enlightenment more?
It's something to think about for sure, especially in today's world, right?
Yeah.
Where we're just bombarded with information everywhere we turn.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Al-Ghazali, he actually goes even deeper. He digs into the process of how we even acquire knowledge in the first place.
Oh, okay.
He says we gain knowledge through two distinct doors.
Two doors.
Two doors.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So the first door is what he calls the outer door. It's the door of our senses. This is how we perceive the world, the physical world around us. We see the colors of a sunset. We hear the sounds of birds chirping, taste the sweetness of fruit.
Right.
All these sensory experiences, they help us understand the material world.
So it's about learning by doing, by observing, by interacting directly with our environment.
Precisely.
Yeah. Okay.
And this idea aligns with another one of his concepts about two types of knowledge entering the heart. So the first type is the one we acquire through the senses.
Right.
Gives us that foundational understanding of the physical realm.
That makes sense. But what about the second door? The second door.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The second door is the inner door, the door of divine inspiration, revelation. It's like a gateway to spiritual realities, to this unseen world that exists beyond what our senses can pick up.
Right. So it's about tapping into a deeper level of knowledge, right? Something beyond the physical senses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Al-Ghazali believed that the heart, not just the physical heart, but the spiritual core of our being,
Yeah.
He believed it has a door, and that door can open to the world of spirits, what's known as alam al-malakut. And through this door, we can access profound truths and connect with the divine.
This is making me think about intuition.
Yeah.
Gut feelings, those moments when you just know something, but you can't explain it logically.
That's a great connection. Al-Ghazali pointed to the phenomenon of dream visions, or ruya, as evidence of this inner knowing.
Right.
He argued that in dreams, the heart, it's not weighed down by the physical body, right?
Yeah.
It can actually perceive events beyond the limits of time and space.
So it's like a window into another dimension.
Exactly. It offers us glimpses of a reality that our senses, they just can't grasp.
Yeah. Have you ever had a dream that felt incredibly vivid, almost like a premonition or a glimpse into the future?
Lots of people have. And al-Ghazali believed that these dreams, they're not just figments of our imagination, they're reflections of the heart's connection to that unseen realm.
Wow. That's a mind-boggling concept, to think that we have that potential within us to access this profound knowledge.
Exactly. It really highlights the importance of paying attention to those inner whispers, those intuitive nudges that guide us on our spiritual journeys.
Right, right. So we have these two doors of knowledge. The outer door of our senses that helps us understand the physical world,
Mm.
and this inner door of the heart that opens us to the spiritual realm.
Yes, exactly. And al-Ghazali emphasized that both of those doors are essential for a complete understanding of ourselves and the universe. You need both. You need the empirical observation and the spiritual insight to really navigate the complexities of life.
This brings up an interesting question for our listeners. When you think about a time that you learned something really profound, something that changed your life, which door did that knowledge come through?
Yeah.
Was it through your own direct experience? Was it through study? Or maybe just a sudden realization, a flash of insight that came out of nowhere?
That's a great question to reflect on
Yeah.
because it encourages us to think about the different ways that knowledge enters our lives and to appreciate the interplay between our intellectual and spiritual faculties.
Okay, so we've acquired knowledge, right?
Yeah.
We've gone through one of these doors. The next challenge is holding on to it, making it a part of who we are.
Absolutely. And this is where al-Ghazali brings in the power of memory.
Okay.
He describes memory as this vast internal army,
Hmm.
and it plays a crucial role in processing, organizing, and storing all the knowledge that we take in.
So it's not just about memorizing facts and figures. It's about actually engaging with the information,
Right.
making connections,
Yeah.
integrating it into our worldview.
Exactly. Al-Ghazali actually broke down the different cognitive processes involved.
Oh, wow.
He starts with common sense that allows us to perceive the world through our senses.
Okay.
Then there's imagination, our ability to create those mental images, scenarios in our minds.
Yeah.
Reflection that lets us ponder and analyze information.
Okay.
Recollection that helps us bring back past experiences and knowledge. And then finally, memory that acts as this storehouse for all this mental activity.
It's amazing how he highlighted this interplay of these different cognitive faculties and really emphasized that memory's not passive. It's an active way of engaging with knowledge.
Precisely. He understood that memory, it's vital not just for accumulating information, but for integrating it into our lives, right? It shapes our understanding of who we are and how we relate to the world around us.
That makes me think about like how we engage with information in today's digital age. With like instant access to so much information. Are we sacrificing depth for breadth?
It's a valid concern. Al-Ghazali, he stressed the importance of contemplation, of reflection, of allowing that knowledge to really sink in, to take root in our hearts.
Right.
Are we neglecting those practices now that we're constantly pursuing stimulation and instant gratification?
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. How can we cultivate mindful learning in a world that's constantly, pulling us in so many different directions?
Well, maybe we can take a cue from al-Ghazali's teachings.
Okay.
By carving out that time for reflection, stepping away from the digital noise, and allowing ourselves to process information more deeply.
That's a good suggestion. Now, shifting gears a little bit here, al-Ghazali's exploration of knowledge, it takes a really fascinating turn when he starts talking about death and the afterlife.
Right. It might seem a little abrupt, but he saw this deep connection between how we live our lives here and what awaits us in the hereafter.
This is where his teachings get really interesting. He has a perspective on death that really challenges how we usually think about it. He describes death as a precious gift for the believer.
That's pretty radical, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most people are afraid of death.
Of course.
So how does he reconcile those two things, that idea of death as a gift?
Well, al-Ghazali, he describes this world, this physical world, as prison for the believer.
A prison.
It's a prison.
That's a pretty stark way to look at the world, isn't it?
It is. But he argues that in this world, we're constantly being bombarded by temptations, by distractions. We're constantly battling our lower selves, our nafs, which is always trying to pull us away from the divine. We're surrounded by things that, they glitter, they entice us, but they leave us empty.
Right. So our nafs, our lower self, is kind of like those primal desires and impulses that can lead us astray.
Exactly. Think about those times when you should do the right thing, but you give in to temptation, or you procrastinate, or you're just stuck in negative thoughts. That's your nafs.
Right. It's that internal struggle between what we aspire to be and our baser instincts.
Precisely. Al-Ghazali believed that this struggle, it's a defining feature of our earthly existence. It's a test, a trial that we have to go through to purify our souls.
Okay.
And get closer to God.
So from this perspective, death is actually a liberation.
Exactly.
It's a release from the chains of the world and this constant battle against our nafs.
A homecoming, a reunion with the divine.
Wow.
Where the soul is finally free.
That's a really profound way to look at death. It's not an ending. It's like a step towards spiritual freedom.
And this is where the concept of dhikr al-maut comes in, the remembrance of death.
Okay.
So by consciously thinking about our mortality, we can detach ourselves from worldly distractions,
right,
and focus on what really matters.
This reminds me of those stories of the caliphs, these powerful rulers who at the moment of death, they realized that all their worldly pursuits were meaningless.
Right. Al-Ghazali used those narratives to show that even the people who achieve worldly success, they often realize too late that they've wasted their lives. They wish they had a second chance, but it's gone.
It's a powerful reminder that worldly possessions and achievements, they don't really matter when faced with death.
And he shares a very poignant story about the Prophet Muhammad's own encounter with the angel of death, emphasizing that death comes for everyone, even the most revered figures.
Right. These stories, they serve as reminders that we're all just travelers on this journey and that our time here is limited.
Exactly. Al-Ghazali urges us to really embrace this awareness, not with fear, but with a sense of urgency, a sense of purpose.
So how do we do that, though? How do we incorporate this remembrance of death into our everyday lives without getting morbid or fatalistic?
It's not about dwelling on death in a negative way, but about using it as a motivator for positive change.
Okay.
Al-Ghazali suggested, maybe take a few moments every day to reflect on your mortality. Ask yourself, what would I regret if I were to die tomorrow? Am I living in accordance with my values? Am I making the most of this precious life?
Those are good questions.
They are.
They make you really evaluate your priorities and make choices that are aligned with your aspirations.
Precisely. And this brings us to another key aspect of Al-Ghazali's teachings, his description of what happens to the soul after death.
Okay.
He really paints a very vivid picture of the soul's journey. He describes the questioning of the deceased by the angels, the torment of the grave for those who lived unrighteous lives, and the bliss of the righteous. It's a very clear reminder that our actions have eternal consequences.
Right. It's about understanding that our choices matter, that they shape not only this life, but also the next.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this brings us to what might be Al-Ghazali's most important message.
Okay.
The importance of disciplining the self, what he calls jihad al-nafs.
So it's not enough to just know about these things. We have to actually work on purifying our hearts, on aligning our actions with our beliefs.
Exactly. He emphasizes self-awareness, recognizing our flaws and addressing them, seeking guidance from a spiritual mentor.
Okay.
He stresses the importance of cleansing our hearts of impurities, things like envy, malice, greed, to make it a fitting dwelling place for God. He even describes what happens to the soul after death.
Yeah, right.
He paints this very vivid picture of the soul's journey, the experiences of the deceased in the grave.
Right.
He emphasizes the importance of righteous deeds and developing a good character.
It sounds like a lifelong process, this inner transformation, this continuous effort to refine ourselves and get closer to the divine.
Exactly. And it's about acknowledging our weaknesses, confronting those shadow sides of ourselves, and actively working to transform them.
This is where the idea of having a spiritual mentor comes in, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Al-Ghazali believed that we all need guidance on this path, someone to help us through the complexities of that journey.
Right. So seeking out those wise teachers, those mentors, those guides.
Yes. And he shares these powerful anecdotes of individuals confronting death and their different responses.
Hmm.
Some are filled with fear and regret, while others face death with peace and acceptance.
Yeah.
These stories really remind us that there are many ways to approach the end of life,
Right.
and that it's important to prepare ourselves.
It's about having someone to like show us our blind spots, to challenge us to grow, to offer us wisdom.
Exactly. And al-Ghazali also talks about these veils that prevent us from really knowing God, from experiencing that fullness of our spiritual potential. He identifies these veils as things like arrogance, greed, envy, excessive attachment to worldly possessions.
Right. So these veils, they kind of cloud our perception, prevent us from seeing clearly.
Exactly. They create a barrier between us and the divine.
Hmm.
And al-Ghazali suggested that these veils can be lifted
Okay.
through a process of spiritual purification, through sincere repentance, through turning away from those things that separate us from God, and consciously cultivating things like humility, generosity, and compassion.
It's a process of inner transformation then.
Exactly.
Shedding those layers of ego and aligning ourselves with the divine will.
Precisely.
His teachings, they really offer this powerful framework for self-transformation.
They do. It's a reminder that true knowledge, it's not just intellectual, it's transformative.
Hmm?
It should actually lead to positive changes in our character and our actions.
And he doesn't shy away from acknowledging that this inner struggle is difficult.
Right.
Right. He recognizes that it's a hard path, that there are a lot of obstacles, a lot of temptations.
Yes, but he also emphasizes the rewards of that journey. He talks about the joy, the serenity, the sense of purpose that come from overcoming our lower selves.
Right.
And connecting with our true nature, that pure divine nature.
Right. I remember him using like that image of the heart becoming a polished mirror reflecting the divine light.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful analogy.
To illustrate the power of that spiritual discipline.
He understood that each of us, we have the potential to be a vessel for divine light, a beacon of goodness and compassion. But that potential, it has to be cultivated through consistent effort, through self-reflection.
I'm starting to see how all of these ideas fit together. Al-Ghazali's teachings on knowledge, on death, on disciplining the self, they all point to this path of spiritual growth, of transformation.
Exactly. He understood that those concepts, they're interconnected. They inform each other.
Yeah.
They guide us on this journey towards a more meaningful existence.
As we kind of wrap up this first part of our deep dive into Al-Ghazali's teachings, there's so much to think about. I'm already like reevaluating my own relationship with knowledge, with death, with this ongoing process of self-refinement.
Well, that's a testament to how relevant his ideas still are. They continue to challenge us, to inspire us.
Yeah.
They offer us this profound framework for understanding ourselves and our place in the universe.
Before we move on to the next part of our exploration, I want to leave our listeners with a question to think about. Think about a time in your life when you encountered a piece of knowledge that truly resonated with you, that shifted your perspective, that inspired you to take action. What was it about that knowledge that really struck a chord? How did it affect you, your thoughts, your feelings, your actions?
That's a great question to reflect on. As we continue our deep dive into al-Ghazali's wisdom, we'll explore the transformative power of knowledge even further and how it can really shape our lives in profound ways. So, building on our exploration of Imam al-Ghazali's ideas on knowledge and remembering death, let's dive a bit deeper into his take on the nature of death itself.
Okay.
And the journey of the soul after we leave this physical world.
It's one of those topics that, kind of sparks both curiosity and a bit of fear.
Right.
But al-Ghazali tackled it with this really unique blend of like philosophical depth and spiritual insight. And he offers a perspective that really challenges how we usually think about death.
He didn't see death as an ending. He saw it as a transition, a separation of the soul from the body.
Right.
And he uses this really striking analogy, comparing the soul to a rider and body to a mount.
Oh, interesting. So like the body is the temporary vehicle for the soul during our time here on Earth, and death is just the moment when the rider dismounts, moving on to a different realm.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Yeah.
And al-Ghazali, he doesn't shy away from describing the physical process of death itself.
Right, right. He goes into some detail there.
Yeah, it's pretty vivid. He paints this picture of the soul leaving the body, almost like it's being gently extracted.
I remember him talking about the tightening of the chest, the labored breathing, those subtle changes in the body's appearance as the soul gets ready to depart.
Yes, his descriptions are quite detailed, almost like he's trying to demystify death, make it something more tangible, something we can relate to, rather than this abstract, scary unknown.
Yeah, I mean by focusing on those physical sensations, it forces us to confront the reality that death is not some distant event, but a concrete experience.
Right, and he wants us to really internalize that inevitability, not in a morbid way,
Mhm.
but as a motivator to live with intention, to make choices that are in line with our values and our spiritual goals.
This makes me think of his discussion of the angels Munkar and Nakir, who question the deceased in the grave.
Yes, that's right. That's a central concept in Islamic tradition.
Yeah.
And al-Ghazali uses it to emphasize that death is not an escape from accountability.
Yep.
It's a continuation of our spiritual journey.
Right, where our actions and our intentions, they still matter.
Exactly, they have weight. It's a reminder that the choices we make in this life, they have ripple effects.
Yeah.
They shape our experiences in the hereafter.
Right, they extend beyond just, our immediate perception.
Precisely. And he emphasizes that the soul's existence, it doesn't end with physical death. It continues on, and our actions here have a direct impact on what we experience in the afterlife.
This reminds me of those vivid descriptions he gives of the experiences of the deceased in the grave, the torment for those who lived unrighteously, and the bliss for those who cultivated virtue.
Yes, and those descriptions, while, they can be a bit graphic, they're meant to be a wake-up call.
Right.
To get us to really examine our lives and strive for righteousness.
It's about understanding
Yeah.
that even though our time in this world is finite,
Mm-hmm.
the consequences of our actions, they're not. They extend far beyond.
Exactly. Al-Ghazali, he understood that human tendency, right, to get caught up in our immediate desires and concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And we can lose sight of the bigger picture. So he uses those vivid images of the afterlife to kind of jolt us out of that complacency,
Right.
to remind us that our choices, they have an impact not just on our present well-being, but on our eternal destiny.
It's about recognizing that our choices matter.
They do. And this brings us to his discussion of barzakh,
Yeah.
that intermediary state between death and the day of judgment.
Right, where souls are kind of in this state of either bliss or torment.
Exactly. Reflecting the seeds that they sowed during their earthly life.
It's a period of waiting, right?
Yeah.
A time for reflection and reckoning.
It is, and it's not the final destination. It's more like a preparation for the final judgment.
Right, so he's connecting these seemingly abstract concepts to our choices now,
Yeah.
to how we're living our lives right now.
Exactly. Our actions in this world, they're like seeds, right?
Yeah.
And the harvest comes in the hereafter.
It's a powerful reminder to really be mindful of our actions and make choices that align with our values.
Absolutely. And to cultivate those qualities that will benefit us both in this life and the next.
His teachings, they really offer us a new way of looking at our own existence, challenging us to see beyond, those immediate concerns.
Absolutely. He wants us to expand our perspective beyond just our ego-driven pursuits and to see ourselves as part of a larger cosmic order.
This leads us to another really fascinating part of al-Ghazali's teachings that fits in perfectly with this discussion of death and the afterlife. His emphasis on disciplining the self, what he calls jihad al-nafs.
Ah, yes, jihad al-nafs. That internal battle against our lower selves, our desires, our ego. This is really at the heart of his spiritual framework.
Right. He believed that it's not enough to just know about God and the afterlife.
No, you have to actively work to purify your heart
Mm-hmm.
and align your actions with your beliefs.
It's about taking that knowledge and putting it into practice.
Exactly. And this, according to al-Ghazali, it's a lifelong process. It's a constant struggle against those things within us that pull us off the path.
Right.
He breaks down the human self into different parts. He talks about reason, anger, desire, and how these things can either lead us towards God God or away from God.
I remember him using the analogy of a charioteer,
Yeah.
with reason as the charioteer and the horses representing our desires and emotions.
Yes, it's a very vivid image, and the charioteer's job is to control those horses,
Yeah.
to keep them from running wild and taking us off course.
Right. So it's about using reason to guide our emotions, our desires,
Exactly.
rather than letting them control us.
And this, it takes discipline, vigilance. It's a constant effort to develop those qualities that will keep us on the path.
Al-Ghazali talks about a variety of ways to achieve this inner discipline.
He does, and he emphasizes self-awareness, introspection, practicing virtues.
Right.
He stresses that it's important to recognize our weaknesses, our negative patterns, so we can start to address them. He encourages practices like mindfulness, contemplation, developing good habits to counteract those negative tendencies.
And he also talks about the importance of having a spiritual mentor,
Absolutely, yeah.
right? Someone to guide us and keep us accountable.
Someone to offer guidance and support.
Yeah.
He really believed that was crucial, especially if you're serious about spiritual growth. A mentor can provide, support, encouragement, help you navigate the challenges along the way.
It's like having someone to show us our blind spots, to challenge us, to offer their wisdom.
Exactly. And al-Ghazali, he also talks about these veils that prevent us from truly knowing God, from experiencing that fullness of our spiritual potential.
Right, right. He identified things like arrogance, greed, envy.
Yes, and attachment to worldly possessions and pleasures.
So these veils are kind of those aspects of our ego that distort our perception and keep us from seeing clearly.
Precisely. They create that barrier between us and the divine. And al-Ghazali suggests that we can lift those veils
Okay.
through spiritual purification, through repentance, turning away from those things that separate us from God, and really working to cultivate virtues like humility, generosity, and compassion.
It's about transforming ourselves from the inside out.
It is. It's about shedding those layers of ego attachment
Yeah.
and aligning ourselves with the divine will.
His teachings really offer this powerful framework for self-transformation.
They do. It's about recognizing that our actions have consequences, that they shape not just our present, but also our future, our eternal future.
Right. It's about understanding that even though our time in this world is limited, the impact of our choices goes beyond that.
Exactly. He highlights the importance of embodying those divine qualities we claim to know through our compassion, our generosity, our service to others.
Right. And he also emphasized that knowledge and character are interconnected.
They are.
That true knowledge, it should lead to righteous action.
Yes, he argued that as we purify our hearts, as our understanding grows, our actions will naturally reflect that inner transformation.
This reminds me of his concept of ada,
Yes, adab.
which is often translated as etiquette or proper conduct.
Right, but it's more than just outward behavior. It's about our intentions, our inner state.
Al-Ghazali saw adab as a reflection of our character, a manifestation of our knowledge. He believed that our actions, they reveal our inner qualities.
They do, and that by cultivating right action, we also purify our hearts and our souls.
Right, right.
What?
And he gives really detailed guidance on adab in all aspects of life, from how we eat to how we dress.
He does. He emphasizes mindfulness, grace, intentionality in everything we do.
It's like he's giving us a blueprint for living a life of dignity and purpose.
A life that reflects those divine qualities we aspire to embody.
And ultimately, that's the goal of knowledge,
Yeah.
right? According to al-Ghazali, it's to become closer to God, to reflect his attributes in our lives, to contribute to the well-being of humanity.
To live in a way that honors that divine spark within us and in all beings.
Right, and his teachings, they offer an antidote to that intellectual arrogance that can sometimes come with knowledge.
They do.
He emphasizes humility, gratitude, recognizing our limitations.
He reminds us that the more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know. And that realization should make us humble.
Right, right. It's a reminder that knowledge is a journey.
It is. It's a lifelong process of discovery and self-transformation.
Yeah.
Fueled by curiosity, by humility, and a willingness to be guided by something greater than ourselves.
As we get deeper into al-Ghazali's teachings, it becomes clear that he's not just presenting these abstract concepts. He's offering us a practical roadmap for spiritual growth, a path that requires both intellectual effort and sincere devotion.
He really emphasized the interconnectedness of all aspects of our being.
Hmm.
Our thoughts, our actions, our emotions, our spiritual aspirations. And he provides us with so many tools and techniques to cultivate those qualities that will lead to a meaningful life.
His teachings are so relevant, even centuries later.
They are.
They offer us timeless wisdom for navigating the complexities of life.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'd like to leave you with a question to ponder.
Okay.
Think about a time in your life when you felt a deep sense of awe, of wonder, of connection with something bigger than yourself. What was it that triggered that experience? How did it change your perspective? And how can you bring that feeling of awe and wonder into your everyday life?
That's a beautiful invitation to explore those depths within ourselves,
Yeah.
to connect with that divine spark that resides in each of us. We'll come back to this question in the next part of our deep dive as we continue to unravel the rich tapestry of al-Ghazali's teachings. So thinking about that question, those moments of awe and connection to something bigger, I've been thinking about some of my own experiences and how they've, kind of shaped my worldview.
It's amazing, isn't it? Those times that shake us out of our everyday routines and remind us of, well, the mystery, the wonder that's all around us. It's
Yeah,
like a glimpse into a reality we often forget about. We get so caught up in the daily grind.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Al-Ghazali, he really seemed to get how important it was to cultivate that sense of awe.
He did.
He didn't just want us to, learn things in a dry, intellectual way. He wanted us to experience knowledge in a way that awakened our hearts,
Yeah.
that nurtured a reverence for the divine.
He recognized that real knowledge, it transforms you. It's not just about collecting facts. It's about letting those facts change who you are, how you act,
Yeah.
your relationship with God.
He uses that image of the heart becoming a polished mirror, reflecting the divine light. It
Yeah.
suggests that the more we purify our hearts, the more clearly we can reflect that light, let it shine through us.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to think about spiritual growth and refinement.
It shows how connected our inner state is to how we act in the world.
Absolutely.
And this brings to mind his concept of ilm al-laduni.
Right, that knowledge that comes directly from God,
Yeah.
bypassing the usual ways of learning.
It's like knowledge that's infused into the heart,
Yeah.
a gift from the divine.
It's a fascinating idea that we can access this deeper level of knowing that goes beyond our intellect.
It taps into a source of wisdom that's beyond our normal perception.
Exactly. And he also talked about the knowledge that we gain through intuition, through inspiration, through our own experiences.
Right, right. So it's not just about books and formal education.
No, it's much broader than that.
We can find knowledge in nature, in our own hearts,
Mm.
in those moments of synchronicity,
Those moments of sudden insight, those flashes of inspiration, those can all be sources of knowledge.
Yeah, yeah. If we're open to them.
It's about being open, being receptive, letting ourselves be guided by something beyond just our rational minds.
And this leads us to another really important aspect of al-Ghazali's teachings. His emphasis on actually doing good deeds, on putting our knowledge into action.
Right. He often said that knowledge without action, it's like a tree without fruit. It's barren.
Yeah, yeah. He believed that true knowledge should show up in our actions,
It should.
that our deeds should reflect our understanding, that we should strive to live out those divine qualities.
He talked about compassion, generosity, service to others.
Yeah.
He believed that as we purify our hearts, as our understanding deepens, our actions naturally start to reflect that inner change.
And this reminds me of his concept of adab.
Ah, yes, adab, often translated as etiquette or proper conduct.
Right. But it's more than just like good manners.
It is. It covers everything from how we interact with others to our own thoughts and intentions.
Al-Ghazali saw adab as a reflection of our inner state, a way our knowledge and character show up. He believed that the way we act reveals our inner qualities, and by cultivating right action, we purify our hearts.
He offered a lot of guidance on adab in different areas of life, from how we eat and sleep to how we talk and what we wear.
Yeah. He emphasized mindfulness, grace, being intentional in everything we do.
It's like he's giving us a blueprint for living a life that's full of dignity and purpose.
A life that reflects those divine qualities that we're striving for. And ultimately, that's the goal of knowledge, isn't it?
It is to become closer to God, to mirror his attributes in our lives.
To contribute to the well-being of others, to really honor that divine spark within us and in everyone.
And his teachings, they offer a way to counter that intellectual arrogance that sometimes comes with knowledge.
Right, right. He reminds us to be humble,
To be grateful.
to acknowledge our limitations.
The more we learn, the more we realize we don't know.
Yeah, and that should make us humble,
It should.
not arrogant.
It's a good reminder that knowledge is a journey, not a destination.
Right, a lifelong process.
Driven by curiosity, humility, and a willingness to learn from something greater than ourselves.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Imam al-Ghazali's teachings, I'm really struck by how relevant his message still is. You know, it speaks to people across time and culture.
It does. His ideas about knowledge, death, the heart, the importance of doing good, they give us a powerful framework for living a meaningful life.
Right, a life that's connected to something bigger than ourselves.
He challenges us to not just accumulate knowledge, but to really transform ourselves from the inside out, to cultivate those qualities that reflect our true divine nature, to live with intention, to strive for excellence, to make choices that align with our values.
His teachings, they're an invitation to go on this journey of self-discovery, a path that requires both our minds and our hearts, a journey that leads us to a deeper understanding of ourselves, the world, and the divine.
So as we conclude our exploration, we encourage you to take these insights with you. Let them shape your thoughts, your actions, how you interact with the world.
May they serve as a kind of compass, guiding you towards a deeper connection with your own heart and a more profound experience of the divine.
And may you always remember, the true essence of knowledge lies not just in what you know, but in how you live.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you'll continue to explore these ideas and find meaning and inspiration in the teachings of Imam al-Ghazali.